I'm gonna regret this.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, buddy. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
How's it going?
Yeah, pretty good. How about you?
Well, it's going a lot better, but now I'm talking to you, so here we go.
Okay, well, I'm going to record this on my end, okay, as well, okay?
Yeah, knock yourself out.
Great.
Okay. All right. What are we doing? What are we doing today, Sargon?
I heard that you wanted to talk about transgenderism.
Okay, yeah. Let's start with that one. Why not?
Okay.
Okay. What do you got?
I don't know. What's your opinion on it?
I mean, I think it's a thing, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah?
What's your? Weren't you making some? Didn't you say you didn't believe it was real or something? I feel like I saw some tweets from you.
No. No, you didn't.
Um. Oh man, are you gonna make me? How about you just tell me your stance on it rather than trying to Right, I'm not trying to get you or whatever. I'm curious. What do you think
Well, you
about
were
it?
just trying to put your ideal opinion in my head, weren't you? I don't really know, to be honest. It's a really complicated topic, and it's got massive implications. So,
Gotcha. Real quick, just to be clear,
like,
so the tweet that I saw from your
yeah,
account was, if trans women were actually women, you wouldn't need to distinguish them with the term trans. So that was the
yeah,
quote that I was thinking of. Yeah. Okay. So
yeah. So, okay, so are you of the opinion that the thing they say, trans women are women?
yeah.
How do you interpret that?
My interpretation of it is that trans people want to be seen as whatever gender they choose to express themselves with. And so they would want the same treatments in society generally as anybody that would identify as said gender. So rather than being seen as like a trans woman, which implies that you are less than or different than a woman, they would want to be seen as an
Hmm.
actual woman, right?
Hmm. And do you think that there are any issues with that? Do you think that's something that's likely to happen?
Likely, I'm not sure. I would say probably. In terms of
Yeah.
possibly or like morally, should it happen? I mean, probably. I mean, I'm a big fan of liberalism. I think we should support people's individual rights, and if that's what people want, I don't really see any harm in it. So yeah, sure.
Yeah, but the thing about that is also you're putting the decision making power into the hands of society, and society has requirements that aren't served by the term trans women are women.
Um, so this is kind of odd because I think that pretty much everything is put in terms of like every decision is made by society. I don't know who else would make the decisions, but
The state.
oh, okay, so when you say society, you're saying like non-legally, I guess, right, or not enforceable via state
Yeah,
powers, which
yeah, yeah,
okay,
absolutely. Independent communities of self association. The
okay,
state's a unique legal entity of compulsion.
okay. So like, what in particular are we talking about here? Like,
I think breeding is really what we're talking about. I think fundamentally, when you say trans women are women,
uh-huh.
at the end of the day, there's always going to be the necessary component that is childbirth and, like, reproduction, which is
No,
one of the. Oh, you know, okay, hang on. Let's just before we jump in, sort of thing. And
sure.
so I think that is fundamentally one of probably the main reason ultimately that anyone ever forms long-term relationships, at least in the overwhelming majority of cases. I think the expectation to breed is there.
Sure, but so like, uh, have you had this conversation with other people before?
Well,
There's
lots
no
of
way
people,
you're
lots of
not
times, right?
okay because you can't defend this argument. It's horrible. So
Well,
what would you say to a woman that has her tubes tied that's not capable of having children? It's just no longer a woman? Or what about a man that's had a vasectomy? Is he no
no, I
longer a
didn't
man?
say they were no longer a woman, but they no longer fulfill the sort of necessary biological imperative that the gender role of woman is designed to operate around.
Okay. Oh my God, there's so many loaded terms in here. So first of all, designed implies an argument from nature, which is we're not even going to go to there. But when you say
Well, no. Okay, stop, because that's exactly the first place we need to go. Because I do think that the gender role, the social gender role of woman, has a natural origin, and I think that it's designed to fulfill a natural function.
Okay, so are you going to take on are you going to take on a morally prescriptive position based on nature? Are you going to tell me that because certain things are designed in some biological way, we have some sort of like an ought statement that we ought to pursue something because it's like in some ways found in nature? That's like a really weird
Well,
position to
it
take.
really depends what it is you're talking about. But like, I don't think that gender roles are transcendental. So
Okay, I mean, if you want to go down the naturalistic arguments, I mean, we can do that. It just we're in a really weird area because we're gonna have to start deciding like, well, what falls under that and what doesn't, which implies we don't actually care
yeah,
about nature at all. We're appealing to some higher
no,
power. Yeah, well, because
I don't agree. I think the thing that we're appealing to is the natural biological state of humanity.
the natural biological state of humanity is not two men having a conversation on Discord, though. Like, what do you mean by that? Like, our natural
Yeah, but
state is like
we're not
hunter
trying to
gatherer.
reproduce.
Not everybody is constantly trying to reproduce in their lives.
I didn't say they were.
Then why are we talking about reproduction when we're talking about trans
Because
women?
for the majority of people, they will want to.
Even if I'm not even sure if that's true, but even if that is true,
That's of course true.
I well,
The population would tank in one generation if that wasn't true.
the population is already tanking across every single
No,
Western country
it's
almost.
shrinking by a small degree every year. Yes.
Yeah, but it's shrinking, contracting because not everybody wants to reproduce because women are
Yeah,
having
but
less
that's a
children.
tiny number of each generation that reproduces. That's a
It's
tiny
less
number,
than
which is
it's
why
less
it's a
than
tiny
2.0. I
percentage.
mean, like women, we're not having children at a replacement rate anymore. I don't know what tiny. All of these words are like really weird. Like, what do you mean by tiny number? We're not replacing our population right now. Like all of the
Yeah.
populations of the Western world are
Okay.
shrinking.
Calm down. Right. Yeah. the the replacement rate in say in my country is 1.9, but that means that a very small number of women are not reproducing in comparison to the number of women who are reproducing. It's millions and millions and millions of women who reproduce,
Okay,
and
sure.
it's a downward trend
Okay, so let's say that the majority of people want to reproduce. How is it even relevant to this conversation?
because we're talking about a social role. And the purpose of the social role of woman is to facilitate the ability to form a breeding pair with a man, because they're the two aspects of humanity that both need to be fertile in order to conceive and produce a child. This is what I mean when I say you can't separate the gender role from woman, the gender role of woman, from the biological essence of what it is to be a female. One was created by the other, but the formulation "trans women are women" suggests that the gender role of woman has created the biological reality of being female, which is not correct in my opinion.
Okay, so let's just walk down the road. So do you think
Hmm.
that let's say that women en masse said that they wanted to pursue like higher education and work opportunities more than they wanted to pursue having children. Do you think that they should have the right to do that, or should we culturally or via the state or whatever force them, compel them to have more children instead? Because that would be
I
like the
don't think that's got anything to do with the transgender debate.
okay, well, you're speaking in terms of like biological prescriptivism right now. You're telling me that like the role of woman should be to have a child or for like childbirth.
I didn't say it should be anything. Society at large will decide in a very sort of holistic way what the role of woman should be. But I think that there's no getting around the fact that it was something created by society to account for the observable biological differences between men and women, and the biological reality that women have an imperative to breed and the mechanism by which to do
What do
so.
you mean by
And so a social
imperative?
mechanism needs to be created to justify that and to facilitate that.
Sure. Okay. So I'm not trying to misquote. I'm just trying to understand because a lot of the words you're using
Hmm.
are really loaded. When you say women have an imperative to breed, what do you mean by that?
Human beings have a biological imperative to reproduce.
What do you mean by imperative? Like, are you saying that this is like just descriptively something we do, or are you saying that it's something that we should push
It's
towards?
something that they feel that they want to do,
Okay, so what does that have to do? If some people feel like they need to reproduce, which is fine, I'm okay with that. What does that have to do with the discussion about trans people?
because we need a way of being able to actually do that.
But we still can do that. You can go and have a child with a woman that is capable of having a child.
Yeah, but you need to know what a woman is.
No, you don't. You need to know if they're you do. You're
Of course you
laughing,
do.
but you realize that there are women that you would call real women that can't have children, right? Do you acknowledge
Yes, I
that?
know.
Okay, so
Yes, of
knowing
course.
whether or not somebody is a woman under whatever arbitrary Sargon definition of woman there is, knowing that somebody
It's
is a
not my definition.
Well, it is your definition. Trust me.
Well, adult human female. It's just the dictionary definition. It's
No, no,
the common
no.
definition society at large uses.
Sure. So
I haven't
common.
innovated the definition of woman.
So common definition versus actual scientific definition versus kind of like the categorical definition. These are all like things that can be heavily contested. But in what you would
Sure.
call a woman, there are things that fit under that category that are not
Yeah.
capable of having children. So why would it be so
Yeah.
bad to include trans women under that?
I didn't say it would be bad.
Wait, so then what's the problem? Then what do we disagree with?
Well, the problem is the essential attack on the social construct that is a woman. Because the thing is, saying trans women are women is a statement that will necessarily lead to circumstances where a part of the gender role that is woman will not be fulfilled. And so the person who was engaging with the trans woman, expecting that aspect of the gender role to be fulfilled, will find themselves necessarily not only disappointed, but I guess deceived in a way.
Wait,
And
this is simply solved with a single question. When you're having a
go on.
conversation with somebody and you bring up children, you say, I would like to have children, and the other person says, I can't have children. How does that conversation damage the role of women or the social category of woman in the West?
Because of the way it's approached and the things that will happen. I mean, you could easily describe it as transphobic to ask a person who you think is trans if they can have children.
Nobody in any part of the serious world would say that, aside from four follower
Well, there are
people.
lots of places in the unserious world
So
where they'll say that.
yeah, because on four follower accounts on Twitter, you can find any stupid opinion. But like actual
Oh,
people,
you can find this in
actual
people who are quite.
I would love to see any source ever.
This is the opinion of the police in Great Britain, you know.
The opinion of the police in Great Britain is that if you ask somebody while you're on a date, would you like to have children or can you have children? That's transphobic. That's the position of the police in Great Britain.
They certainly could interpret it that way.
Has it ever been interpreted that way?
Possibly, I'd have to have a look.
Okay, so then I don't care about this. So generally, for any serious person I've ever heard had this conversation before, I have never heard any trans rights activist ever say, if you ask a trans person if they can have children, you are being transphobic. Now, that's not to say that there might be ways you could phrase it. So, for instance, in the way that you approach it, I would definitely say it's transphobic because you seem to imply that a woman that can't have children is not a woman, which is not only damaging to trans women, but even to normal women, or what you would consider normal women. So
hang on, stop there, because I think you're kind of hitting on something. I think that there are women who definitely feel like less of a woman because they can't have children, and I think that a sterile man would probably feel like less of a man as well.
Yeah, but we don't want people to feel that way. Don't you think that?
I don't know. I'm just trying to. You can, yeah, I agree that it's not nice.
On that particular thing, do you think it would be good, or do you want society to feel like if a man can't have a child, he should view himself as less of a man?
It's not that I want this. It's that the problem that you will always run up to is the fact that definitions necessarily leave something outside of what they're defining, and those things that are left outside of it may not be happy with being left outside. But at the end of the day, that doesn't mean you should change the definition for their feelings.
We absolutely should.
No, I don't agree. I think that the thing it depends what it is.
Well, I mean like every definition, every category that we've created is a socially constructed category that we create to serve human happiness. So why wouldn't we redefine it? The category of man and woman are socially defined categories. We could change it if we want to make more people happy. Why wouldn't we?
Well, by that reasoning, why define anything?
Because I just said because we get some utility out of it.
I don't think you get utility out of words that don't have solid definitions. I think the word becomes useless.
I never said we couldn't have solid definitions.
You just did. If we
I said we could change the definition.
Yeah, but if we're changing the definition to mean something that is not within what we consider the definition useful to be defining, then you're not really. I mean, if the term woman can be used to define someone that is biologically male, then it's no longer an adult human female.
First of all, the term woman, under your definition, probably already does define some people that are biologically male, and you don't even realize it. Firstly. Secondly, when we use
How would that be the case?
because
How
I
would that be the
guarantee you
case?
that I could show you pictures of XY chromosome women that have oh, fuck, there's a name for the condition, but it basically you have extreme androgen insensitivity, and you can grow up your whole life
Yeah.
and completely look like a woman, 100%, and you would look at her and you would say, well, let me see her vagina. Oh, she has one. That's a real woman. And then you would look at the genes and you would say, oh shit, they have XY chromosomes, and you would have no idea what to say, right? So this idea that there's some hardcore,
Okay, so that's an abnormality, right?
it's absolutely something that exists, though. What I'm saying is
Yeah, but
that
but that's a genetic abnormality, isn't it?
what does that have to do with my argument?
Well, what your argument is, what I would argue is that if we're going to define things, then we're not going to be defining them to satisfy the abnormal fringe cases. We're going to be defining them to satisfy the vast majority of cases in which they'll be useful. As in,
Okay,
that's
when you
what it's going to be
say
most useful,
sure,
right?
so would you agree that we make definitions in society for them to be useful?
Yes, I think
When
that's
you
fair.
say when you say we make a definition to be useful, what do you mean by useful? What do you mean by that?
To be used and facilitate whatever interactions that need to be facilitated
Cool.
by presumably the largest number of people.
Awesome. I agree with that. So we create definitions in society and we organize
Yeah,
categories because they're useful to people
yeah,
insofar as that they serve some need to make most of us happy. If we can expand
yeah.
the category of woman to include trans woman, I don't see what the problem is for that.
Because it's not accurate. I mean, like these definitions. This is what I'm trying to say.
Wait, can we do this
The
word by
words.
word? Let's do this word by word. When you
Yeah.
say
Okay. No.
not
No. Listen.
accurate,
Listen. No. No. Listen. The concept of woman is not a transcendental concept. It is biologically essential.
no, it's not. Wait, what?
Yes, it is.
No, it's
Yes, it
not.
is.
Show me where
Well,
in.
I disagree with you.
Well, no, you can't disagree. You're just wrong. There's nowhere in
No,
this.
I can disagree, and
No,
I
no,
don't think that you're correct.
it doesn't matter what you think here.
Well,
There's
if a woman in standard usage of English or just any language, which going back into the midst of time has been adult human female, then that is a biologically essentialist word. That's the purpose of it. It's
so
designed to reflect a physical biological reality.
there you go. It is so we have categories that we've created because we believe that they reflect some underlying physical reality. The concept of female, that isn't a
Right.
real thing. That's not something that exists in
Really?
nature. Yes.
Really?
Yes.
I
There's
don't agree with you.
okay, if we eliminate all human beings, where do you find the concept of female?
In the animal world, I
No,
suppose.
you
But
don't. You can find
why
some
don't
things
you?
because what you have is you have some things that have collections of certain features, and if we want, we can label
Yeah,
them in certain ways, right? And that's
yeah,
what we do as people. We label things because we get
yeah,
some value out of it. We have people that
yeah,
generally have vaginas, can give birth to people. We've got people that generally have dicks that fuck
yeah.
people, right? We call some of
Yeah,
these
males and
female,
females.
yeah, we call some of these females, we call some of these males. But there is nothing in
Yeah.
science that says we must have this category of female, we must have this category of male, or that we must
No,
define
it's
them in any particular
philosophy
way.
that we need to think about there. Science can only tell us data. We need to be able to interpret that, and for that we need philosophy.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
philosophically, when we're creating these categories, we have to understand that the reason at the end of the day we create these categories like male and female isn't because science tells us to, because science can never make these kinds
No.
of claims. It's because we as a society have decided we want this definition because it makes all of us happier. That's generally how everything works in reality.
No, it's we have it to reflect a biological reality about human beings
Why do we care about reflecting a biological reality about human beings?
because we have to live with one another.
Because it makes us happier when we can organize these differences. We get use out of them.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. It
Yeah.
makes us happier when we organize these differences.
Okay, because
Yes,
we
that's
get
exactly right.
utility out of them, right? But we could
There,
organize.
there is certainly a utilitarian argument to be made, yeah.
Sure, but
But
we could.
I think that it's probably deeper than that, and I think there are probably other reasons that these things are tied. That are again, I can't stress enough. I do believe that this is very biologically essentialist, and I think that trying to separate that is ridiculous. Because I mean, as soon as you separate, if you say that gender is transcendental, okay, why did we create it in the first place?
Because we have some utility out of it. It's essential to recognize that every category that we construct as humans, we do so
But
because.
that's a biological essentialist argument.
No, it's
If
not.
it's
My
essential,
argument is not
what's it
biological.
categorizing?
What?
What's it categorizing?
What is it categorizing? We taking a
Yeah.
description of some things that we hope are representative of some underlying traits, and we're assigning them, we're ascribing them to certain categories.
Biological traits, right?
Yes.
So, So
Biological essentialism, your naturalist argument, implies that because something exists in a certain way in nature, we ought to recognize that difference. But this is not how we construct categories in real life. For instance, there's a million
no, I
different.
don't agree. I think that is in fact how we construct categories in real life.
Then
And I
why don't
think
we
that what you're
categorize people
doing,
by the number of moles on their body? We
well,
could
I
do
would
that.
imagine that utility is something that we would apply here.
Okay, so what you just did is instead of you avoided the science and you said, well, hold on, I'm going to appeal to utility. That's my argument. What I'm telling you is that
No,
every time we construct a category, we're appealing to the utility of the category, not some scientific or biological realism or constructivism or
yeah, I
whatever.
agree, but the category itself is a biological category.
No, there's no such thing as a biological category. Categories don't
Of
exist
course there
biologically.
is.
No, there's not. I can't.
We choose to. Look, no,
Yeah, we do. No, no. Wait,
you are
listen,
you
please.
are
What you
you are
just said.
fundamentally misunderstanding what
No,
I'm saying.
what you just
Right?
said betrayed your
You
argument.
no, I promise you, you absolutely are. Right?
You just said that we choose to. The fact that we make that
Yes.
choice is a normative choice. We're doing something out of a
Yes.
moral
Well done.
compulsion. It's a normative choice.
No, it's not even moral. I mean, it probably is both also moral.
No,
but there is also a practical necessity.
No, the necessity.
Of course there is.
Just because we make a choice to organize things in a certain way doesn't mean that choice is necessarily backed by reality, and that reality tells us we have to make that choice. So, for instance, I could have 100 people, and I could separate them based on height. I could separate them based on gender. I could separate them based on eye color. I could separate a million different traits. But nothing in science is going to tell me what I should separate them on. I have to make that normative choice.
I don't care about the science of it, really. It doesn't really matter about the science of it, because it comes down to the interpretation of it. And at the end of the day, there is no questioning the biological reality that male and female as distinct sexes do exist. Even if humans went around to categorize them, the animals themselves would categorize themselves in that way. They don't even need a language to do this. This is such a primal thing. It's done by pheromones, man. Right?
We could also categorize people based on the number of bruises they have, based on the color of their hair.
Could, but that would be stupid, and only an idiot would suggest it.
Your language is so loaded. How can you not understand this? You just said it would be stupid. You're begging the question.
Is reflective of reality. But if you want to argue that trying to reflect reality is loaded, okay. I don't care. What I'm saying is disprove what I'm saying, and you can't, because I'm describing reality. You're not.
You are literally disproving your own statements with every sentence you speak, and you don't realize it. When you're saying, you keep saying that your reality is, I'm choosing the reality. The choices that you make are arbitrary and unjustified. That you're not.
These aren't choices that I made, and they're not arbitrary, and they are just.
You're missing a deeper level. Okay, what you're saying is that male and female refer to some underlying physical property. I don't disagree with that, of course.
Yes.
However, I could design a million categories that could refer to any number of underlying properties. Now, whether or not we choose to use male and female, or whether or not we choose to use redhead or brunette, that's an arbitrary choice. We don't find the answer on what we should categorize.
That's not true. I don't agree that that's arbitrary. I think that there are physical imperatives that make us choose these things because of frankly, they're the path of least resistance.
Okay, can you tell me then, why ought we value the category of male and female?
Because there is a distinct connection with the social category of man and woman to male and female. Okay, these are things that we use in our social lives.
Okay, so you're describing things to me. You're giving me descriptive claims. What I'm asking you is, why ought we value male and female? Don't tell me that we do. I'm asking you, why should we? Why ought we value the category of male and female?
We are social animals, and we need to interact with one another, and we have inherited a very effective way of doing this, especially considering it's such a complicated issue. And this is something that it's been gifted to us from the millions of previous generations who had to struggle with the same things. And they came up with a fairly workable system that works for something like, 99.3% of people or something. So that's pretty good, really.
Okay. Why ought we value that, though?
Because it's working.
Okay. So let's say that we take this, okay? Let's say that we say that our moral values ought to come from things that have worked, and I won't make you define worked in the past, because we could go a million different ways with that, right? What if I make the same argument in favor of, say, slavery, or in favor of, say, lack of women's rights, or in favor of, say, hunter-gatherer lifestyles?
Because you could make that in favor of hunter-gatherer lifestyles. In favor of slavery, you're obviously violating someone's human rights. But do you consider gender roles to be a violation of a person's human rights?
On a consequentialist level, yeah. If you're constantly denying somebody the ability to exist happily in society, yeah, I would consider that to be a pretty bad thing.
Yeah, but is that a violation of the human rights?
What do you mean by... I don't believe in human rights. What do you mean by human rights?
Cheating on you isn't a violation of your human rights, but it's a pretty bad thing.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean by human rights.
I don't know. I don't know if people have the right to determine their own gender. I don't know if they do. They might have the freedom to try,
Wait, so
but
who
I
has
don't
that
know if you can
right?
call that a right. Well, I don't know. I mean, a lot of gender happens in other people's heads, so it's this is the thing. Like, it's such an unbelievably complex thing, and you're
It's
just
not
trying
though. It's
to.
very simple. It's actually
No,
incredibly
that's
simple.
bollocks.
It's not. It's
That's
it's
obvious
so
bollocks,
simple.
man.
It's very simple.
No, no, you're just being a contrarian. I mean, like, no one with
How
any
wait,
sort of credible understanding of this would say this was simple. No,
every single
like, you
person
have to be a lunatic.
when I say simple, what I mean is if you understand the arguments, it's very easy to start at a very foundational level and get all the way to where we are now, right? If we
Yeah,
reckon
but I don't think that you do understand the arguments. I think there are lots of arguments, and I think that it's important to be aware of the foundation with which you're starting, because you're starting from transcendental foundation. You're saying that gender has no connection to the biological entity that is a human being.
okay, here, you know what? I'll try it. You can stop me when I'm wrong, okay?
Hmm.
So let's look at universal categories. So a universal category is a human constructed thing that is the form of something, right? Let's say that we say like a chair, right? That's a universal category. Now, what is a chair? I mean, we can argue a million times. Is it made out of wood, blah, blah, blah. But there's like a universal form of a chair, right? Now, all categories are arbitrary constructs that don't.
No,
Oh, go ahead.
hang
Okay.
on.
Yeah.
Well, hang on, yeah. You said, okay, so you're saying that there's universal form of chair. Are you arguing like the Plato's world of forms
Sure.
perspective?
Yeah. Let's borrow some Plato. Sure.
I don't think that's a wise idea.
Okay, well then maybe
I
you'll hammer
don't
me
think
down
that
on this
there
one
is.
then, okay? Do you think that the form
Well,
of a
yeah.
chair exists somewhere? Do you think that that's stored somewhere in the world, the universal form of a chair?
Well, a chair is a platonic form. I would suggest that what we have defined to be a chair doesn't have a universal ideal. No.
Okay, cool. So then I would take that same argument and I would apply that to every category that we've constructed. What is a
Yeah.
computer? That definition is expanded. What is a cell phone?
Well,
What is
I agree. I don't even think the category of woman has a universal ideal.
Okay, cool. So when we would build ourselves all the way up to saying, okay, well, what are some socially constructed categories we have? Right now, we can both agree that the categories of white and black are very constructed, and those have changed over time as well. Well, also the category of male and female
Well,
or woman and man is
I
also
think
changed as
there's a
well.
definite. I think there's a definite biological component to the categories of black and white.
But only because we say there has to be. That's the only reason why. That doesn't come from science. It's
Yeah,
because,
but we only say they have to be because we want the terminology to have a use in our everyday lives.
yes,
Because what you're suggesting, yeah, I know, yeah, exactly. Yes, that's you agreeing with me.
yes.
Because what you're suggesting is that if we don't do that, like the alternative to what you're suggesting is that we don't really have intelligible language.
No.
Yes.
Woman and male can be the same they are now, but we expand them to include trans people because it makes those people's lives better and it doesn't do any damage to the
Yeah,
currently
but
existing categories.
that's
Why would you
it
not do that?
does.
How?
It does do damage to the currently existing categories.
How?
Because it makes them misrepresentative of the thing that they are. Like an adult human female is someone we can biologically identify, and you want to include that to expand that to include the category of adult human male, and that's ridiculous.
Okay,
Then the
like, can you give
definition
me?
disappears.
No, it doesn't disappear. I don't know why
Yes,
you
it
think
does.
that just because you expand a definition, all of a sudden it becomes worthless. But let's say
Because
that's true.
man and woman are dichotomized.
First of all, they're not a
You are
dichotomy.
either a man or
No,
a
no, no.
woman,
First of all, it's
and if you
not.
expand it
No,
to include both, then they
this is an anti-science argument. So if you want to say that, that's fine. But the distribution between male and female is
We're not talking
bimodal.
about science.
It's not binary. It is bimodal. There's a ton of overlap between what is male and what is female. Okay.
I appreciate that, but we're not talking about science. We're talking about sociology. And
Okay.
that means we're talking about interpretation.
Sure. So if we talk about it from a sociological point of view, what damage or harm can come from me including trans people under the definition of male and female?
Well, on its surface, not much. It appears, right? On the surface, it seems that not much. But then you've got into the sort of like what is a father and a mother? Because then you've severed the connection, the sort of biological connection of father and mother, and then you're starting to get into. And again, that's not accurate.
Let's do this let's do this very slowly, step by step. So you're telling me that if I say trans men are men and trans women are women, that I've destroyed what it means to be a father and a mother? What do you mean by that?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, you can make the female the father and the male the mother.
Oh, okay. Can you tell me how this is damaged? Like, are you saying that like a trans man couldn't be like a real father, or a trans woman couldn't be like a real mother to like a child, or?
Well, a trans. Sorry, it's remembering the way around. A woman who becomes a man is never going to provide the Y gametes, I think it is, or whatever it is, to a child, right?
Okay.
So that goes explicitly against what the definition of those terms are.
Am I
And
supposed
so
to
you're
ignore
making the
like the
terms themselves
extreme amount of
useless.
irony that this is coming? I'm not trying to make this ad hominem, but aren't you literally a stepfather? Like, are you not an actual father to your
Yeah, but
children,
that's
or?
I'm not the biological father of my stepchild.
But
No, obviously not.
when your son or
Which is why we
children,
have the term step.
but that's not okay.
Like,
And I could be totally
is
wrong, and you could lie to me maybe to win an
I'm the
argument.
biological.
But when your child, if you've got a stepchild, does he come up to you and he say, "Hey, stepfather Sargon" or "Stepfather Carl"? Do they actually call you that? Your kids call you that? Hey, stepdad.
Well, my biological son calls me dad,
Okay.
and my non-biological stepdaughter calls me Carl.
How old?
9.
Okay. What? So
Why is this hard? But this then
well,
plays right back into the.
why is this hard to
No,
believe?
no. But this is why trans women will never actually be women. They'll always be trans women.
Well, we first of all, we're very far from establishing that. But you think that it's you
You've
think that
just.
no, we have not established. I
Oh,
promise you,
okay.
we've not
Okay.
established
Sorry.
it.
Yeah.
So
Carry on. Carry on.
so you're saying that step parents could never be real parents in terms of like how we define like father mother could never be real parents to
It
children.
depends how you define parent, but they can't be the real father or mother, can they?
Okay, I love that you just said that. It depends on how we define parent. I totally agree with you 100%. It depends on how we
Yeah, but I
define
didn't
like
say parent. I said father and mother.
that's could be synonyms for parents. Who are your parents? Your father and your
No, they're
mother.
not. No, they're not. They're different. They're different words. They're often used as synonyms, but they're not the same thing.
Do you not see how incredibly subjective all of these words are? How we can twist and bend and this is what happens. Descriptively, this is
Yeah.
how we use language. And do you see how there's
Yeah.
not much damage? Like if you were in a classroom and some kid was like, I'm going to go to the fair tomorrow with my father and mother, and some other kid was like, that's not your father and mother, that's your stepmother. You should have said parents, right? Nobody like uses language this way. It's not how we recognize these categories socially.
Yeah,
right?
but nobody uses language in the way that the SJWs want either. So I mean, like, saying that, who cares?
Okay, well, hold on.
Like,
Okay, so I'm gonna assume you conceded that whole topic because you just pivoted hardcore. What do you mean by SJWs use language in ways that we don't?
Well, this is what we're talking about fundamentally: is where does language come from, and what decides the profligation of it?
Sure. So language comes from humans. We construct it because it provides us utility.
Yes.
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 Okay.
Yes. Yes. It is not usually imposed on us by the state.
I don't know if SJWs necessarily want it imposed on you by the state. What do you mean?
I think they do. I think they do.
Okay, let's ignore like.
I don't think we'd have laws about hate speech and like the like trans laws and all this sort of stuff if they didn't. I mean, what do you not remember in New York? You can get fined for misgendering someone.
That's if you do it in a discriminatory way. If you're an
I
employee.
don't care, but what you're saying is you don't think they want to use the state, and now you're making justifications for them using the state.
Sure. This is okay.
Yeah,
so we're kind of going to a different argument here in terms of like the
Yes.
overall use of language. So if you want to talk specifically in regards to like laws surrounding like hate speech or in regards to like discrimination laws, which by the way have nothing to do with SJWs. These have existed for decades in the United States. Unless maybe you think like
hang on. Look, I don't want to get off. But the discrimination laws, like these things, can be used by any faction if they wanted to be. Okay, so there's no anyway. Like, look,
I'm just curious. Do you consider somebody like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X? Are these SJWs to you, or
not to me personally? But that's because I agree with their philosophy.
Okay, so you've literally defined SJW as somebody you disagree with. Like, is that really the definition? That's what you just said.
Yeah, kind of. I think everyone has like someone is an SJW to someone else,
So within this conversation, you have argued in favor of rigid definitions that have real meanings to define what a man and a woman is, even if that makes some people unhappy. And now when we go to move on and talk about SJWs, now you've given me a definition that is more fluid than any definition I've ever heard in my entire life. Like if your definition
SJW is a colloquial thing that's just come about because of people needed a way to define it. I mean, you could just define SJW quite restrictively and say a social justice warrior is an intersectional progressive activist that is very loud and active on the internet, blah, 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 blah. They have certain characteristics that are common, but not necessary, etc., right? But if you think about what they're not doing anything too different to what anyone else is doing. Really, the difference is in the way they're operating. And to be honest with you, I kind of like defining SJW by the way they act rather than the thing that they're advocating for. But like I said, right, we're getting way off topic. Let's get back to the "are trans women thing.
Sure. So I still don't see the harm. We were talking about parents. I don't see the harm in saying trans women are women or trans men can be men. Like, I don't see the harm in that. I don't see where this damage to society comes in here.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. It's like, I think the problem is you can't really make people believe it.
Yeah, you can. Of course you can. You do it with cultural pressure.
I don't. I mean, sorry. Okay, I mean, you can certainly make people say that they believe it. Yeah.
Okay.
But that's tyranny.
It is,
What happened to freedom of conscience?
There is no. I mean,
there is no freedom of conscience.
Well,
Jesus, okay.
It depends on what you mean by the word freedom. But I mean, like, you didn't freely choose to speak English, did you? No, you were born with that language,
that's true.
right?
That's true. Yeah.
So I mean, like, socially, I mean, we have all sorts of pressures around us, and we can kind of dictate the pressures.
But I think that if I don't believe that a man is a woman, I should be free to voice that concern.
Well, I mean, we could have to go really far back. I would argue no.
Can't do that in New York, though.
Not if you're an employer or a building owner, because we have laws against discrimination against protected classes. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's laws against thought crimes.
No, laws against discrimination.
That's what it is.
No, it's laws against discrimination.
No,
and protected...
it's misgendering someone.
No,
but gender isn't just a.
So it's intentionally misgendering someone in a discriminatory way if you're a building owner or an employer.
Yeah. But if I don't agree that trans women are women, I'm not misgendering them, in my opinion.
Oh, that's fine. Then you just aren't allowed to own a business, and you can go fuck off. I mean, I'm okay with that.
Wow.
Much the same way. Well, sure.
Tyranny in favor of transgenderism.
If you argue that tyranny is protecting the rights of some people, then sure. I mean, anything can be tyranny.
I don't agree that you have a right to have me call a man or.
Do you agree that we have a right to tell a business owner that they should be allowed, that they should hire black people and white people, or is that a thought crime as well?
Sorry, that they should hire.
Yeah. So let's say that let's say that somebody says, now hiring, no black supply. Do you think that if I go on and
tell that's not saying they should hire blacks. That's saying they're not allowed to not hire blacks.
Sure. Yeah. It's essentially the same thing. Am I allowed?
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's absolutely not the same thing.
Okay. So if I tell somebody, hey, you can't discriminate against transgender people the same way you can't discriminate against black people, those two things are different?
Yeah, because of course they are, right? But either way, I think.
Wait. How are they different? Wait. Can you please tell me how those are different?
Yeah, because yeah, right. Because we don't agree on what the transgender person is,
and a lot of people
we don't agree on what the definitions of what we're doing. And
people in the past didn't agree that black people were people, or even human, so they didn't want to hire them. So,
yeah, but we're not debating the humanity of these people. We all agree they're human. Right. The problem is the social construct of gender roles are not simply the purview of trans people. They also belong to other people.
Okay, so what I'm asking you, without getting into that again, is how can you tell me there's a difference between discriminating against black people and discriminating against transgender people? It's the same type of thing, except for you, discriminating against transgender people is okay.
I must have misheard you there.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, okay. I agree that an employer shouldn't be discriminating on these kind of characteristics. I do agree with that, yeah.
Well, wait, then you agree with the law in New York.
No, I don't agree that misgendering someone is necessarily discriminating.
It's misgendering someone in a harassing or discriminatory way.
No, because it's incredibly ideologically loaded to even suggest that someone can change their gender. This is, I mean, like...
Hold on. Do you not understand how much you are presuming with everything you're saying? You're saying it's biologically loaded to assume gender. You realize that a very racist person...
No,
please let me... Yeah, okay. It's ideologically loaded to assume that a black person can work the same as a white person as well. To certain types of people, that's ideologically loaded as well.
Yes, it is, yes. So it's an ideology that we all agree with.
Now we do. Maybe in 50 years we'll all agree about the transgender thing as well.
Maybe we will.
So maybe this isn't a good argument.
I don't agree. I don't agree that there is a necessary parallel here either, right? Because I mean, a black person being human, that is a demonstrable reality.
Not a human, but a human. A human in the same way as a white person.
Yeah, okay. But the philosophy that we do this by is by humans, right? And yeah, I agree. You know, they are a human in the same way a white person is a human.
But not everybody always agreed with that. We do now.
Yeah, I know. And they didn't agree because of ideology.
Okay.
They weren't looking genetically or anything like that. And they certainly did have their own particular philosophy on it, right? But the thing is, there is not the same kind of biological congruence between the two comparisons, right? So a woman transitioning to be a man will never be able to produce fertile offspring, right? But that is part of the expectation of
No,
woman and man,
but
because
that's
the purpose of the roles is to facilitate reproduction,
no. First of all,
right?
that's not true either. The purpose
Of
of
course that's true.
no, it's
Of course
not.
that's true. It
Then why
couldn't be
are we?
anything else.
Then why? What? Oh my God, that's so wrong on so
It
many
couldn't be
levels.
anything
It
else.
absolutely
It couldn't
is.
be
The
anything else.
purpose of the
But,
world, descriptively, if we look back through the millennia, through the 10,000 years of human
yeah.
civilization, right? The purposes seem to be for people to achieve maximum levels of happiness. That seems to be the purpose that we move towards.
No. The world is certainly not designed to facilitate your happiness.
I'm not saying that it's perfect, but I'm saying that generally, that's what we as people do. We push towards new
No,
tech.
that's what we as people do, because that's for our own comfort. But
Yes, that's what I.
biologically,
No, 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 no. Stop
but we
saying
have
biologically. We don't build society around having the maximum number of children. That's your claim. You're saying that
I
biologically.
didn't say
Yes,
maximum
you're
number of
saying there's some
children.
biological imperative to have children, and that's what like society
There
is
is.
constructed around. But
Yeah.
there's clearly
Yeah.
not, because birth rates are falling because we
Bollocks.
do things that don't necessarily lead to us having more children, right? People that
But I
get.
didn't say that a biological imperative was a sort of a command.
Okay, what is a biological
people-
imperative to you?
People can resist their biological imperatives, right? It's a natural impulse to do something, right?
Okay, so so in the context of this conversation, we're not trying to make descriptive statements about human nature, because neither of us will probably disagree or care about them. We're talking about moral claims. We're talking about normative claims. What ought we do as a society when we talk about transgender people? So when you say people have the desire to have children, this doesn't agree or disagree with anything either of us have said. It's a totally irrelevant point to everything, right? We're talking about.
But this is the base on which the concept of the gender role is built. And it's not just children either. It's actually also to sort of facilitate the social interactions between the two biological sectors.
Okay, now that's a better answer. To facilitate.
Well, no, but ultimately the purpose of a social interaction between a man and a woman is going to, a romantic interest, say, is going to lead to children.
Not always. Definitely not in
society.
I didn't say
today. Always. I said generally.
Okay. Let me not say not always.
This is why people form intimate relationships.
No. Not necessarily. Okay.
I didn't say necessarily.
Okay, good. Then if you didn't say necessarily, then we don't disagree.
If we don't necessarily do it, then we die as a species.
Okay. That's a whole other normative argument. If you want to make that argument, you can. That we need to further a species.
Normative. That's just a logical conclusion.
No, it's not logical. Please don't say that. It's not logical.
It's not logical. If people don't breed, we die as a species.
No, it's not logical for you to make the normative statement that we ought to continue our species. That's a separate argument, that we ought to be.
I didn't say we ought to continue our species.
But you kind of did, because you're using biological imperatives to argue that we should have children because we need to in order to further on our species. You're kind of making the
I could say that. I could say we ought to, and I'm sure I could support that with many things, but you're just misrepresenting the things that I'm saying. Anyway, right, we're getting into like unbelievable semantics. So the thing is, I get back to the core of it. I just don't agree that we can disconnect the relationships between men and women and their biological imperative to breed and the necessity that the human race has for people to breed. I don't think you can separate those things out.
When you say necessity to breed, what do you mean by necessity to breed?
Well, if we don't breed, this human race dies.
Do you think that's something that we ought to be compelled to do, is to further the human race?
I don't think we need to compel anyone to do it. I think people will do it on their own.
Okay, then why do we care about this argument at all? If this isn't a moral compulsion, then why do we even care to bring this up?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, you could probably make an argument that you've got a moral responsibility to breed.
Okay, so is that the one you want to make? Because I'm trying to have a normative discussion with you about how we ought to design society, and you keep throwing out these very weird.
Well, I don't think we should design society. That's the thing.
But what do you mean? That's what your whole life is about. What do you mean?
No, it's not.
That's what you and me do. We spend time on YouTube telling other people how we think society ought to be constructed. We're not science channels where we just describe the state of the world. We absolutely
No. Okay, sorry, I misinterpreted.
Okay, sure.
That, right? But what I think I actually spend a lot of time doing is trying to defend people acting autonomously from people who would like to impose their own particular way of operating on them. Sure. I think that a lot of this can be put down to you don't really have a say, or you shouldn't really have a say in how people have interpersonal relationships, and I don't know how to describe it. Like,
wait, who's saying that?
Well, what do you mean? Who's saying that?
If we define trans men
Sexual
as
activists, not
if we define trans men
transact.
as men, how does that determine or tell you what kind of interpersonal relationships you should have?
Because there are social problems. If I say I don't agree with that, I
Wait,
mean,
no,
there's
wait, don't. You're going to a totally different argument. I'm asking a very specific, pointed question. What kind of
go on.
interpersonal relationships do you suffer if trans men are included under the category of men?
My basic freedom suffers
How?
because if I
Also,
say I
we're
don't
moving off
agree,
interpersonal. We're abandoning the interpersonal relationship things. But
well,
okay, your personal freedom. Go ahead. How does your
well, yeah,
personal freedom suffer?
I mean, I can be arrested.
Okay. So
No, don't even try and say I don't believe it. I
well,
trust me,
no,
that
because
happens.
initially you told me that your interpersonal. Well, you went from my
Well,
inter.
yeah,
No, wait. You went from.
yeah,
I just want to show you the path that you just took. You said my interpersonal relationships will suffer if we
yeah,
have a
but that's
social
because you asked
compulsion.
a
No, can
question
I
that was
please finish?
unattainable.
Can I please finish one sentence? I haven't finished like a single thing when I've been talking to you. Okay.
Sorry,
So
go on.
you said that if we expand the definition of man to include trans men, that your interpersonal relationships will suffer. And I wanted a definition of that, or I wanted an example, like even a hypothetical. So I'm very curious how that could actually
Okay,
demonstrate.
okay,
And then you
I
went
can
to,
give you
I'll be
one.
arrested for hate speech, which is a totally different type of. That's a totally different argument.
Well, yeah, I agree. You know, I agree. I should have been more specific there.
Okay.
Um, right. Okay. So the problem that I have with this is obviously many, but the I think let's find a good way to describe it. So I really do think that definitions are mutually defined. Right. I don't think they're unilaterally defined,
Wait.
and this
Wait.
is
I need you.
something.
Okay, I'm going to ask you. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be anal, but I need you to be very specific when you define these things
Mhm.
here. So, what do you
Yeah, yeah.
mean when you say definitions can't be defined? Like, what can you? What exactly do you mean by?
No. I said no. I think they're mutually defined. I think that a definition, it's something that the other person has to agree to.
Absolutely. This is it
Right.
Whitaker's Beetle in a Box or whatever? Of course. No, there's no such
Yeah.
thing as a private language. We all have to agree on what words
Right.
mean. I agree with
Agreed.
that. Yep,
Right.
100%. Okay.
Okay. And the fundamental issue that is the stumbling block for all of this is that you don't believe that the gender role of woman has a biological connection, right? And I do.
No.
So
Okay,
we don't
I got to be
agree. No,
really
no.
clear.
Okay,
No, because
hang
your
on.
words are very ambiguous. Okay. Now, when you
I
say
don't agree now.
because you're wrong. When I say that male or female don't have a biological connection, that word connection, okay?
No, man or woman.
Man or woman have a connection.
Yeah.
So they have a connection, and that hopefully they are describing underlying physical properties, but they don't have a
Yeah.
connection, and that they are normatively necessitated by those underlying properties. So, for instance, man is connected to the physical properties of being a man, but it's not necessitated. Just because those properties exist doesn't mean we have to have the category of man. But
Okay,
they do
yeah,
have a connection, okay? Yeah.
that might well be true, but it's also exceptionally irrelevant, right?
It
Because
is the
in
center
the
point to
day,
this conversation. It is
no,
exactly what
no,
we're talking about.
listen, no, it's not, because what you're arguing for, what you're arguing here is like an abstract hypothetical, right?
No,
Yeah, I mean, you know, without the existence of a human being, the concept of man and woman probably disappears, but that doesn't mean that the biological reality of like, you know, I mean, maybe an ape or something, you know, they could have the same biological reality without having the social construct of a man or woman. But the thing is, all of this is centered in our social interactions. So saying that is utterly irrelevant, because at the end of the day, when we say it has a necessary connection, what we mean is philosophically in the way we interpret the world. So it doesn't really matter, like objectively, outside of the concept, the scope of the human experience. There is no thing that is called a man, therefore it doesn't connect to what we biologically describe as a male. Okay, maybe, but who gives a shit about that? We're human beings living in a society in the world, describing things as we understand them and interacting with one another, right? It's such a pointless diversion that you're trying to go on here, right? So anyway,
okay, just to
I
be
think
clear, what
that
you're
the construct has a descriptive element that is expressly to do with the biology of the person we're describing.
wait, can you repeat that statement?
What the last one I just
Yeah,
made?
what you just said, yeah.
Yeah, the social construct, the concept of woman or man,
Okay,
whatever,
yes.
expressly describes a biological condition.
What do you mean expressly describes?
That's the purpose of it.
No, that's not true. The purpose of it that we agreed on earlier, or the reason why we use it is because it provides some utility to society.
Yes, but that's the utility it's providing.
No, the utility it's providing
Yes.
is also something we agreed on earlier. Your own words were that it facilitates social interactions.
Yeah.
Nowhere in literature, nowhere in the
Yeah.
scientific literature, anywhere, you will
We're not
never
talking about
open up.
science. We're not talking about science.
Okay.
We're talking about philosophy.
Okay.
Be specific. Don't sit there going off on a tangent.
Well,
No,
every time you say we're
the
talking
social
about,
construct.
listen, you're on one hand you keep saying we're talking about philosophy, but every time we try to talk about
Yeah.
philosophy, you say it's all semantics. So I'm getting very confused. I don't know what the fuck we're
Well,
talking about sometimes. Okay, I'm
no,
sorry.
I don't agree. I think this is a defensive characterization that is not accurate, because you can't separate the purpose of the construct, which is to identify a man or a woman, a biological male or female, for the purpose of reproduction.
No, okay.
But so no, if I think of it like a
Okay.
a vehicle.
No, I don't need to.
Think
The
of it like a
word that
vehicle.
what you just used, the purpose of a definition, okay? And that so
Yeah.
purpose implies like a reason for its existence, okay? A purpose is so now a reason sounds like a normative, a choice claim, a moral
Yeah,
claim.
it is. Yeah.
Okay, but there is no.
Well, no. Hang on.
No.
Stop. No. Stop. A normative claim does not necessarily mean a moral claim.
Yes, it does. It's a difference between a normative and a descriptive claim. You're saying that.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, no. A normative just is how something should be, but the reason for that could be something other than moral.
What other reasons could there be?
Technical. If I'm making a fucking car, I can say, well, morally, I think that I should be able to run this on, like, fucking orange juice. But technically, it's going to require an oil engine, and that's not a moral claim, you monkey. Come on, man.
No, that's a descriptive claim. The like the engine.
Not a moral one.
No, the engine needs oil to run? That would be like a descriptive.
Yeah, but not all normative claims are moral. Anyway, look, again, we're getting off weeds. Like, okay, so what exactly is it that you think? Do you honestly think that there can be no? It's no problem, and there is no connection to the biology of a male or female that the gender roles have. Is that what you think?
So just real quick, so normative generally means relating to an evaluative standard. Normativity is a phenomenon in human societies of designating some actions or outcome as good or desirable or permissible, and others as bad or undesirable or impermissible. So good and
the thing
bad
is, good
are words that usually
hang
like morally.
I know. Hang on, things you're getting.
Well, like this is the thing.
This is important, because like good isn't really necessarily a moral word. It's a word of. Hang on a second. For fuck's sake! I knew you'd make me.
Well, I'm just saying that normative claims are generally ought claims, right? Normative claims are things that we ought to do generally. And ought things generally imply some level of morality, because you can't find ought claims descriptively. Nowhere in the world am I ever going to find a claim a man ought to be something that has an XY chromosome. That doesn't exist. That type of normative thing can't be found like anywhere in nature, right? That's.
Well, okay then. Okay, well let's categorize it the way that you've described it. So that's actually not a bad place. I agree that a man ought to be something with an XY chromosome.
Okay, now my question is, why?
Because that's the healthy male genetic composition of a human being.
Okay, so notice how many like weasel words you just used there. What do you mean by healthy composition? Are you saying
reproductive? Able to reproduce, presumably.
Okay, so your definition then of man is something that is able to inject sperm into something else? That's like your definition of like male. That's
part
like
of it. No. Well, are you saying male or man?
Male, I guess. Or how do you choose? What do you want to say?
Well, this is the thing. It's incredibly complicated. Well, I mean, the male, I presume, describes the chromosomal and physical arrangement of the biological matter that makes up a human being, right? And then we have female ones as well, and we also have a category of like very deviations on this.
So save us time. What I'm going to end up pushing you on is any necessary condition you give me for male. I'm going to point to a category of people that we both consider male that don't meet it. Let's say that a man that's had testicular cancer, right? Is this no longer a male, or do you have a different like criteria for how you actually define male or female?
I don't agree that like injuries that happen to someone in the course of their life negate the thing that they are.
What if we consider that injury? What if we consider the injury to be sex reassignment surgery?
Yeah, but I'm not suggesting that these categories are perfect and universal.
Oh, cool. Neither am I. That's why I'm arguing that we can slightly change them in order to include more people
Yeah,
and
but I
serve the
don't agree.
happiness of more
We can.
people.
Okay, yeah, but I don't agree that the gender role male, man or woman can be expanded so dramatically to include the other gender role, like
Okay,
the biology of the other
and
gender
I
role. I think that
understand
they're
that.
mutually exclusive
I
there.
agree. Okay, I understand your point there. And earlier, when I asked you, this is how we came here like 10 minutes ago. I said, okay, well, can you give me an example of how expanding that can be damaging to you? And then you said interpersonal relationships, and we kind of stopped there. So let's say we do that. So now we're back here. Let's expand man to also include trans men. Let's expand women to also include trans women. Now, what damage or harm does that cause to any traditional Sargon man or Sargon woman? Like,
Okay, well, I don't know what you mean by Sargon man or Sargon woman,
your
but
definition of
I
man
think
or woman.
I've already explained. What you've done is change the definition so radically as to include its antonym. So I don't know why I would agree to that.
Okay, if we're talking about, okay, well, let's be a little bit more clear. Okay.
Okay, and no, let me ask you a question, right? Would you date a transgender male to female?
I think I would, sure.
Yeah, you'd have
There's
no questions,
basically
no.
it's a long story, but yeah, I've thought about this a lot before, and I almost did. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you were thinking you want to have children one day, I mean, I know you've got. Assuming you didn't,
No, then I wouldn't. No,
would you? But why not?
because I would want to have somebody that can have children.
Yeah, but you're being trans exclusive. You're being transphobic.
No, I'm looking for someone that can have children. This
Yeah,
means that there are hetero
you're
cis. Oh, no,
saying
no, no,
you're
no, no, no,
saying.
wait, stop. Because you think you have a point, but you don't. But this means that there are
Oh, don't
normal.
I?
There are. I keep saying normal. I'm sorry. I'm using Sargon language. That means that there are cisgendered.
You're using normal person's language. Yeah,
Well, I'm using words I think you understand. I could find a cisgendered
I
woman,
understand cisgender
okay,
too.
a cisgendered woman,
Yeah,
okay, that I wouldn't want to date if she couldn't have children. If I wanted to have children, right?
yeah.
So I'm not being trans exclusive. I'm just looking for someone that can have children.
Yeah, but you would also still be being trans exclusive because ultimately your definition of you're not like you're not suggesting that there should be no other differences, right? Because like I said, it's not just this one aspect. This is just the most glaring and obvious one. I mean, there are
Sure. Well,
obviously
let's go
other
into an argument that you can
aspects.
actually defend that because the fertility one is not a
I've
good one.
defended everything perfectly fine up
No,
until
you
this point.
haven't, because I just told
Of
you I
course
could
I have.
not date a normal. Or, I'm fucking. I could not date a cisgendered woman. Okay, I could not date a
Yeah,
cisgender woman, and it could be
yeah,
because she can't have children, and that's it. I could
could
do
be,
that just as well as any trans woman. Like,
could be. If she didn't tell you, would you feel deceived?
if I didn't know that she was infertile,
Yeah,
if I said I wanted to have children, yeah, of course.
yeah. But do you think that there would be any concern from say activist groups who might consider it transphobic to
No,
consider a woman who couldn't have children
to not to not what?
to not be a real woman?
No, because I wouldn't make that claim. I would
Oh,
just
okay.
say like, hey, I want to have children. Are you capable of having children? And the other person, whether they're a cisgender woman or a trans woman, would say, oh, well, I'm infertile. And I would say, oh, well, I that's not what I'm looking for. And I don't think any reasonable trans person would have a problem with that. They go, oh, well, if they really want to have
Okay.
children, then yeah, you wouldn't date that
Well,
person.
I'm sure that a reasonable one wouldn't.
Which is, I think is most trans people. I don't think that there are trans activists that are saying like people are acting like trans people are saying you have to like pair up every cisgender male with a trans woman and force them to date them and be happy. Like I mean, I don't think anyone
Do you
is
think
seriously advocating for this.
yeah, do you think that there's any kind of obligation getting back to the unilateral and definitions of words? Do you not think that there's something inherently entitled to the idea of trying to change language, without the consent of wider society?
Yeah, of course there's an entitlement there, but I would argue that all people should
Yeah.
be entitled in that way. Absolutely, you should be entitled to your own like individual rights and freedoms. Yeah, of course.
Well, we're not talking about rights. We're just talking about language.
Well, no, no, no. Consequentially, we're talking about your right to exist and be happy in a society. That's what we're talking about. If society has a language that is loaded against you,
I don't think
then it,
that's something. Okay, listen, right. So I think that you can pursue happiness, but I think happiness isn't guaranteed, obviously. And
No, but we
but
should
anyway,
do
getting to
everything.
the
We should do everything we can in society in order to help people achieve the greatest amount of happiness. I think. I believe that we have that obligation.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I possibly that's certainly one way of looking at it. But
Well,
the thing
it's
that I have a problem with,
well. Hold
really,
on.
though,
That's
is
really important because
the
if you disagree with that, then we can't go any farther. If you think that we should have a society where everybody can say fuck off to every other person and has no whatever anything could all be horrible to other people and that's okay and that's totally fine, then we just are fundamentally at ends there. We'll never agree on anything.
what should people be able to say fuck off to one another?
In a way that like severely harms or damages large groups of people? I don't think so. No.
Then you're just for censorship. Then, if we can't say fuck off to like a group of people, why can we say it to one another?
Well, it depends on what you're saying it for. And to say that I'm just for censorship is so hilariously reductive. That's like saying you're just
Well,
for
that's what
talking
you're
about
saying.
words. Like, I mean, like, what do you mean? That's like insanely reductive.
Well, you're creating an argument for wide scale censorship. Then,
Do you think that I should be allowed to walk outside and shove my dick into the face of a 2-year-old?
probably not. Why?
Then you're just for censorship, Sargon. Found the fascists.
I
Do you
don't
see?
agree with that censorship.
Okay, but do you see how absurdly reductive that argument is? Do you see how like that's
Yeah, but
really
there's victim there. I mean, there are
okay? And there are victims in society when we use
and
words.
I don't even agree that that's political speech.
Okay, well, other people would disagree. For
Really?
instance,
What's your
women.
political statement when you stuck your dick in the face of a 2-year-old?
What's the political statement of women that walk around topless? I mean, people make political statements in tons of fucking crazy ways. What's the political
They
statement of a
do.
monk setting himself on fire outside of a gas station? Like,
That's why I'm asking you about you shoving your dick in the face of a 2-year-old.
I don't know. I wouldn't shove my
With them, I
dick in a
can see
face.
the political statement quite clearly.
Okay,
So I'm wondering what your statement is here.
I don't know. I would have to find somebody that wants to shove
I
their
would
dick in the
normally
face.
say
Maybe if
that
we
was
have,
from your own
maybe if,
self-indulgence, not political.
it's possible, or maybe it's Amos or whatever, and he wants to make a political statement about pedophilia. All I'm saying is that the idea of telling, sure, all I'm saying is that just because you're saying somebody can't do something, to reductio that to you're just pro censorship,
Okay, well, okay, fine.
a vacuous statement. Okay, yeah, so let's go.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to prick your feelings there. So what I mean is, I don't agree that there should be. I mean, you can make the argument ad nauseum that, well, I feel like a girl and I've done everything else I can do to be a girl, and I promise to tell my partner that I'm not fertile, and so I should be treated like a girl. And that's, maybe that's your claim. That's what you're asking. And I might consider it yes. I might consider it no. There are lots of factors here, but I certainly don't think that should be legally enforced.
Okay. Let's say, okay, I'm going to ask you a broad question, okay? Are you ready? Okay. When you think of whether or not an action is right or wrong, do you think that the action itself is what you look at, or do you think it's kind of the consequence of the action that you kind of look at?
I think that all sorts of things matter. You've got intent, you've got procedure, and then you've got consequence.
Okay. So when I look at these things, for me, okay, so maybe this explains our different point of views. I generally look at the consequences of an action to determine whether or not I think the action is good or bad. So when we talk about something, and this kind of gets into hate speech, right?
Yeah, you're a utilitarian. Yeah,
just kind of sure.
Well, that's what you've just described.
Yeah, I would call myself a rural utilitarian, but sure, yeah. But like when we
it's not the worst thing to be.
Well, I mean, I think it's the best thing to be. That's why it's what I am. But let's say that we have a society that has a certain. Let's say that I created a society, and one of the expressions we used in society was "fuck Sargon," and we just said it every time something bad happened in society. We run a red light, a cop catches, we say "fuck Sargon." Everybody says that. Let's say that in this society. No, I don't. Trust me. You don't live in my head that much, okay? Let's say that in this society, we have a whole bunch of people that call themselves Sargon, and all of them are kind of sad that this exists, right? I don't really care at the end of the day why people are saying fuck Sargon. I don't care if there's reasons or not reasons. All I kind of say is at the end of the day, hey, there's some behavior that exists in society and it hurts a group of people. We should find ways to get rid of that behavior, I think. I think that would be good. So when we look at things like transphobic language or hate speech or whatever, I don't know at the end of the day if the best way to do it is legally or through culture, whatever. But if there are forms of speech that either cause direct or indirect harm to people, I think that as a society, we should try to move away from that. I think that we should highly encourage people to move away from that. Yeah.
Okay, well, at what point do you stop?
It would depend on what exactly we're talking about.
Well, I mean, hate speech then, I mean, if people start Like, you know, if you outlaw hate speech and then you say, right, okay, you're gonna go to jail for misgendering someone, something like that, and then people still keep doing it and they find like underground ways to misgender. I mean, how tyrannical are you willing to become?
So I think that the conversation around misgendering someone has to be done in a very specific way, because you can do this in a discriminatory way, at like a place of business versus in your personal life, and I think that these are two very different things that have very different solutions. So, like for
Okay,
instance,
but the question
mhm.
is, how tyrannical are you prepared to become?
Well, in the case of like owning a business, I'm okay with becoming very radical, such that like you lose your license to operate or you're not allowed to do something.
Jesus.
Yeah, if you discriminate against a certain class of people, much the same way that I don't think a business should be allowed to operate if they discriminate against gay people or black people or whatever, right? Yeah,
Or women or men.
yeah,
I
sure.
take it they
Mhm.
shouldn't be. Right, so women's gyms are pretty fucked.
I think that we can both agree that there are reasonable exceptions to this, and that a woman's
Well,
gym or like
I
a
don't
woman's
agree. This is the
shower.
thing.
Okay, so
But
so
this
you
is the
said
thing.
earlier with
What? No, no,
semantics, we
no.
can do this.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
No, 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 no. Let's stop a second because
Okay.
I don't agree that the side of the argument you're presenting is reasonable.
Okay.
And I think that people who believe that are not being reasonable. I don't think we can find a reasonable middle ground there.
So you think that if I were to say, I think that it's wrong to discriminate against classes of people for the purposes of employment because they create a society where whole groups of people can get fucked, you think that a good counter to that is, well, what about showers that only let in women? You think that's an effective counter to that position?
No, I didn't say showers. I said
Gyms.
gyms. But I mean, but this applies to all kinds of things.
Sure. Okay, give
Like,
me
you
a
know,
better example than a gym.
what
Okay. What about what?
about like movies? You know, if you want to, like, what you're saying is you can never, you know, discriminate against someone on the basis of race for, say, someone playing a Zulu warrior or something in a movie. You know, so we'll have a bunch of gingers playing Zulus and stuff like this. It's like, what these are
Okay,
just
wait.
like,
So, firstly, I think that there is a conversation to be had there, okay, in terms of like
right.
representation of media. But again, now we've gone from like things that have very good reasons for probably being gendered, like gyms or whatever, right? Depending on what we're talking about. And now we're moving on to like arts, right? So,
Okay,
so
yeah, okay,
in like normal
let's go
society,
back
like
to the thing then,
sure,
because this you hit on a thing. Things that have reason for existing, things that are like gendered, like gyms, right? I agree. I think that women only gyms should be free to exist.
okay.
I think that people should be able to self-associate in any way that they want in that way. Like, I don't agree that, you know, a business could set up a business for women perhaps, but then you do get into the other side of it where you end up going, you know, no blacks and stuff like this, and it's not a clear-cut issue.
So the clear
That's the
cutness
thing.
part, I
And
think, would be looking at like what are the impacts on society of a particular thing. So if we talk about like women's gyms, it seems like that's generally a positive impact, that that people like a place to work out where they kind of
yeah,
like look like each other or whatever. That's the thing. Now honestly, I could be persuaded pretty easily against the existence of women's gyms. That's something that I could be persuaded against, pretty easily probably. And if we got to a situation where people were like in cities and like men literally couldn't fucking find gyms because every gym was a woman's gym, I would actually argue very much in the anti then. I would say, well, hold on, this is kind of bullshit. Why do we have women's only gyms? Like, they're
yeah,
literally
I
men that,
agree.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, when we talk about
But
now, generally, this doesn't happen, right?
what
This is very, very, very rare.
Yeah, yeah, but before we move on from that, the problem
Okay.
is you're not operating from any kind of principle, then, are you?
I'm absolutely
You know,
operating from a principle.
you're
Whoa, whoa.
waiting for other people to operate,
No,
right?
the
Of
friend.
course you
So
are. All Mill's greatest happiness principle is an umpire. It's an umpire for dilemmas, right? So you are starting at the end, right? But the thing is, I think that there are many more, like, way deeper problems when you sit there and give the state the ability to redefine what a man and a woman is. I don't think the state should have that power. I think that the power to define what man and woman is should come from society itself, and that's why man and woman look like they do, because these are the most, I mean, if you want to make a utilitarian argument, I think these are the most functional
okay,
methods by which men and
let's
women
move
can
away from like
interact.
let's
But
pretend that we're
I think
both.
there are also other reasons.
Let's say we're
So
both
go on.
talking about society, okay? Because I don't want to get into like difference between state enforcement versus societal enforcement right now, because that's
Well,
another.
it's massively important.
Well, but it's more complicated than that, because I could make the argument that a state enforcement is literally society in and of itself, right? Because the state only draws power from society, and in a
You
democracy,
can't make that argument. No, you can't make that argument. Society is free association, and the state is.
society is not free association. What do you mean?
Yes, it is. It's free association.
Right now, I can't go out and hurt anybody. Right now, I can't go out and steal anything. I can't engage in a ton of different acts. I can't drive on the road in different ways.
It's the difference between liberty and license.
What does that mean when you say that?
Liberty means freedom to act without infringing on the rights of others, and license is just full freedom to act.
And where do the rights of others come from? What are those secured by and protected by?
We consider them to be inherent to the people themselves.
Bullshit. The rights of other people come from the state. That's where they come from. Well, I mean, you're wrong. If I go out and I try to murder someone,
human rights are inherent within you, whether the state exists or not.
No, they're not.
The question
you don't have any rights. If 10 people are born on a desert island in the middle of nowhere, where are their rights at? How do they have intrinsic rights to them?
If one person is born on a desert island somehow, and their mother dies or whatever, how do their rights get infringed?
What?
How do their rights get infringed? If there are no other people around, how can their rights be infringed?
I don't know. I don't even agree that rights exist or a thing that actually exists outside of
well, there we go then.
Well,
why are we having this conversation?
Because you're trying to tell me that rights are some intrinsic thing to a human, and
I think they are. I think they're the freedom to act, freedom of conscience, freedom of thought, freedom. of speech.
So then let's say that you want to
bodily integrity. All of these things are they are inherent in you and require an outside force to interfere with.
No, these are things that literally are only these are things that are guaranteed by the state. Without the state existing, you have no claim to any of these rights. Some tribe will roll through, will rape and murder all of you, and move on and do shit like.
That's all I'm saying is without outside interference, these rights are inherent to you. If you're left alone on a desert island, you can move, think, speak, and act in exactly the way that you want.
Okay. So what if I'm on an island? What if I'm on an island and I start saying mean things to another person? How is that?
I don't know.
Wait. How is that a right of mine if I'm impacting another person like that?
Because you can move your mouth.
Okay. What if I want to move my What if I want to move my fist into a person's face? Is that okay?
Well, that's the difference between liberty and license.
Wait. Why? They could just move away.
Okay. Well, I don't really want to get into silly games with you.
So you keep saying this, but your positions are completely and totally unfounded. Like I feel like you've it sounds like somebody that is in high school that kind of read something from the Libertarian Manifesto, and then you kind of have the one line, but as soon as I push you, what does it actually mean to have rights? You're laughing at me because you can't define any of it because it's an absurd concept. It's an absurd conversation.
No, I don't agree. I think. What do you need defining? I've defined everything.
Let's say that I can produce a measurable harm on somebody by uttering certain words to them, or let's say that I can produce a measurable harm on them by hitting them. I'm asking you to clarify the difference between these two actions.
Well, it's obviously on a scale, isn't it?
I don't know, is it? I'm asking you.
Well, it must be. I mean, I don't even know what kind of measurable harm you would think. I mean, it really depends how you're defining what harm is. I mean, normally we can consider harm to be sort of physical violence, like what you're talking about, like punch someone in the head. That's a direct physical act. There are definitely ways of harming people that aren't with you physically attacking them, but they're usually quite identifiable and are not usually caused by simply speaking to someone.
Okay, so what I'm asking for, again, is for you to give me the difference between these two things. Let's say that I have somebody in an island, and let's say every single day I go to this person, I say, you're an ugly neckbeard fuck, I hope you kill yourself. And after 2 weeks, he finally does it because it's too much for me. He can't handle it every single day. Let's say I get 5 other people to do this, right? That's okay, but if I walk up to the person and I hit him, that's
I don't know if that is okay. I don't think that is okay.
Okay, so...
Well, would it be because bullying or something like that?
Would you call that hate speech? Or...
No, I wouldn't call that hate speech. Then neither would someone who believed in hate speech call that hate speech.
Okay, well, I don't know. So you're telling me that there are words that could produce...
Is neckbeard a protected class?
No, because neckbeard isn't something you're born with. It's a lifestyle you choose. So different thing.
God damn.
Yep.
I'm never going to be impressed.
So let's say I can produce a measurable harm on somebody by uttering words to them, or I could do it by hitting them. What are the differences between these two things? Okay.
Why do I have to explain the differences between speaking mean words to someone and hitting them to you? I mean, I just did that.
No, you didn't. You're hardcore. So you're begging the question, right? You keep saying well, obviously the difference is hitting them versus speaking. But I'm asking you to illustrate that difference.
I explained the difference. I don't think that the measurable. I don't obviously whenever you're defining something like harm, that's a subjective term, right? it's what I might consider to be harmful, you might not consider to be harmful, right? So we have to have negotiation on what we consider to be harm, and I don't think that just saying things that people disagree with or don't even like or whatever is necessarily harm. I don't think that would be included in my standard.
Wait, then why did you say earlier that you thought if you had five people all shouting at someone that they were neckbeard fuck until they kill themselves, you said that that would be harmful?
Because that's different. You've got a closed environment where it's like 5 or 6 people on an island, and 5 of them are constantly bullying and harassing and ostracizing the other one.
Okay, let's say that it's
That's
not.
obviously going to cause social problems,
Sure.
but that's not the same thing.
Sure. Okay, so let's change it a little bit. Let's say they're not directly saying it, but let's say
Why can't we just talk about the actual ideas, man?
Sure. Well, let's talk about the actual ideas. Sure. Sure.
Hypotheticals
So let's
you
say
set up, right?
no. Okay, fine. We can talk about the actual ideas. Let's say that there are people like Benjamin Carl Sargon of Akkad or whatever who get online and they make YouTube videos about how trans
we're
women
not going
are.
through another hypothetical.
No,
We've been through.
I'm using real life examples. Real life examples. Okay, you and a ton of other people engage in rhetoric that is incredibly transphobic and has a measurably harmful impact on the lives of people that are trans people. Sure, we can. We can look at the suicide rates of these types of people. We can look at the.
And how are you gonna demonstrate that I've contributed to that?
It's very fucking difficult. I mean, you've got to do it with a ton of fucking longitudinal studies. It's difficult. It's not impossible. It's difficult.
You're not going to be able to. And I don't think I am, because I don't really say much about transgenderism.
I mean, you just came on to have an hour discussion with me about it, and you've tweeted things in the past.
Previous to this point, Destiny, believe it or not, I've actually done things, and not many of those things actually involve trans people.
Okay, you literally tweeted that trans women weren't real women. Like, you literally have tweeted this. What?
They're not. The fact
sure, but I'm saying you've tweeted this, so you
distinguish them.
Sure.
Like,
so you've tweeted this before. So I mean, like, you have talked about this. Maybe not much. I mean, we could talk about
one tweet. Yeah.
Okay, maybe it's just one. I didn't follow every single tweet you've done. I'm sorry. We could talk about something like Black Lives Matter or something more, or feminism or something more. I mean, like, there are tons of these kinds of movements.
We can if you want to change the subject. And I mean, I'm happy to do it. Okay, look, I don't know why you're so confrontational. I was talking to you because I really enjoyed your appearance on Jesse Lee Peterson. It was just the most fun thing to watch, because he just keeps framing a question in a kind of closed way and then beats that person with the question. He does it with everyone, and you handled it quite well. So did Hassan Piker, actually. But yeah, I don't know why this has to be such a confrontational thing. But I mean, okay, so let's just finish off the trans.
Can I explain that? Let me explain it, okay? This is why I'm so confrontational, okay? Because it seems like when I talk to people, I'm going to say people like you, based on our last conversation and things that I've seen, kind of center-leaning people that say they're liberal or whatever say, right? The problem is that if I create a society where every single day white people go out and they lynch black people, they literally kill them, that people like you would say those people are racist and that's horrible. And I would agree, and we would all agree. But if I create a society where everybody is saying, you know what? I don't think black people should be in video games or movies, and I don't think I should have to date black people. I don't think black people should necessarily be guaranteed the right to work, blah, blah, blah. Then what happens is that we can create a society that causes a measurable harm towards different types of people, but people like you will defend that under some weird context.
I don't agree that I would defend that.
Okay, that's the feeling that I get. That when I talk to somebody like you, unless I can show you...
Why?
Because literally earlier you were challenging my statement that having all of society be transphobic can produce a measurable harm on trans people. You challenged that statement, like you didn't believe it. So that leads me to believe that you would challenge other statements where I would say, hey, hate speech can lead to demonstrable harm. Okay, go ahead.
I think that there definitely can be demonstrable harm, like from a society that is openly transphobic. But the problem is, I don't agree that transphobia is not agreeing to linguistic changes of the fundamental sort of building blocks of our society. Because whether you like it or not, language really does affect everything we do. And the thing that the transgender activists are attacking is literally the foundation of all of civilization. I'm uncomfortable with them going for something that fundamental.
Okay, but what if changing that fundamental thing can produce a higher overall happiness for everybody in society?
I don't think it will. I think that when you disconnect the concept of male and female, man and woman, from the biological reality of male and female, then you are acting as if these social constructs are transcendental. And to say that they are transcendental means that they can be replaced at any time for any reason, because there's no particular reason that they're in their place now.
I mean, that's true. They can be replaced. They're not biologically essential.
Well, I mean... It's a different. Again, it's a huge conversation.
Well, but
But
it's kind of the
I
center point to our conversation. If you think that like male and female are
okay,
like,
can you name a society that doesn't have male and female?
yeah, I
Man and
know that
woman,
like
sorry.
there was like a fucking I want to say in older India, didn't they have three genders? I'm not as well read on history. I'm really bad about it. But
Yeah,
like,
no, no, I know what you mean. There is what is considered to be a third gender in like some Indian culture somewhere, right?
okay,
But that's obviously an outlier. That's obviously not represent. I
okay,
mean, like
sure,
even tribes
but
in the
like
Amazon have men and women. Like,
this appeal to history to try to talk about like prescriptive behaviors for society is not interesting to me because it's not how I think about any
okay,
of my moral statements. Like if I were to think if somebody were to come to me like, hey, do you think that like how should we treat animals or how should we treat some group of people? Like my go-to is
I
never
see where
like,
you're
well,
going.
in
I see where
history,
you're
like
going.
how do they do it? Like that's not
No,
I
no,
don't
no.
think
It's
yeah.
I'm not really appealing to history. What I'm trying to point out is that the sexual differences between male and female is part of the human condition,
Okay.
and it ends up evolving out of it gender roles of man and woman, and these differ between cultures, obviously,
Okay.
but they're always distinct, and they're distinct for a reason. And I don't think we should start messing around with that.
Why
And as
not?
soon as you because as soon as you start unmooring that from the biological reality of being a male or female, then you open it up to almost anything, and there's no real good argument to stop them from being completely perverted until they don't really mean anything at all. But I think they do
Let's
need to
say
mean something. I
let's say
think
that
that to
that
raise sort
actually
of like
happens,
healthy
right?
families,
I mean
you
like
do actually
but
need
the thing is
like
that
these kind of roles.
this has already happened, right? Like if I go back like 70 years ago, right?
Hmm.
Men typically didn't have long hair. Men didn't wear earrings or jewelry.
Well,
Like men didn't do certain things. But now if we look at like some of the manliest men today are fucking decked out in jewelry or have very long hair, right? I
yeah,
mean like these
it
types of
doesn't
things.
matter.
So I mean like
That
these
doesn't matter.
wait, what doesn't matter?
The expression of the gender role itself doesn't really matter, you know. I mean, it could be that all men are supposed to wander around in ball gowns or something, and all women wander around in three-piece suits. It really doesn't matter if they. But what matters is that they are distinct and defined,
Why does that matter?
because then people can use them as shorthand in order to communicate and interact with one.
Yeah, but like let's say hypothetically, let's say even that did happen, that these things start to wash into each other like quite a bit. Why would that be so bad?
Because I think they're necessary for people to get along and to be able to form predictable relationships. Again, it's a method of communication. Like we can't take that away from the idea of gender identity.
You
It's
don't
something
have to
that
take it
is
away.
well, you kind of are.
No,
As soon
you're
as you start
not.
saying all the definition, of course you are. What does it mean when you start like undefining things?
It depends
Then
on
you're
the
taking away a
definition. Like
concept.
for me personally, okay, I prefer to date people with vaginas. That's my personal sexual preference. If I expand the definition of women to include trans women, right? That doesn't bother me much, right? If I find out what somebody's genitals are, whatever, before we fuck or
Yeah.
whatever, that's fine. It's not. There's no skin off my back. It doesn't harm me at all. If this creates a
Okay.
measurably massive positive impact, though, for people that do identify that way, then yeah, sure, that's really easy for me to do. It's not bothering me. It's not skin off my back.
And
It's not destroying
and
society.
and for you that's fine, but for someone else that might not be fine, and you have no authority with which to impose it on them. And that's why when the state does impose it on them, it's tyrannical.
Well, everything the state imposes on you is tyrannical by that definition. Like
No, I don't
taxes.
agree.
Do you
I
think
don't agree.
taxes are tyrannical?
No,
How is stealing money from you not tyrannical? But
it's not stealing money. But let's not get into the taxation.
well,
Come on, that's
it's the
that's well off
perfect.
the beaten path.
It's absolutely in line, right? The reason why
No,
we're okay with
I
taxation.
don't agree.
Okay, well, in my understanding of it, the reason why we're okay with taxation is because even though we're taking money from individuals, we are creating a higher positive net benefit with that money. The total utility created for society is going to be higher than if that person had just kept their money. Much the same way that
Okay,
by changing a definition from, say, trans men and men to just calling everybody men or whatever, at least socially, right? Much the same way that that can produce a higher overall utility for society. That people that are cisgendered men aren't really affected that much. It doesn't really matter that much. And then people that are trans men are much happier as a result of it.
yeah, but what I think you're doing is just effectively setting up a new aristocracy. I don't think that you're increasing happiness overall. If you wanna be utilitarian, that's fine. But I don't think that imposing language on the majority of the population by force is going to increase
Okay, what if it's
is
just
going
by
to lead
social
people to have more
pressure?
happiness.
What if it's just by a lot of
Well,
social pressure?
I don't agree that that would be necessarily conducive to the greatest happiness either.
Okay, let's just talk about social pressure since the state force stuff gets a little bit more complicated. Like,
Well, it does, but unfortunately, we're in a position where the state is actually enforcing it. And I mean, I would, even if you believe all of the things that you believe, there's no particular reason that you should think the state should enforce that.
oh no, I absolutely have reasons for it, of course.
Well, no, I mean you could obviously, but like it's
Sure.
not necessary.
It is for what I believe to be a good or just society, sure. That when people come
I
together,
bet it is.
sure. So when people come together, people can create more value between themselves than they could independently. Do you agree with that, right? That two people can have some level of happiness, but two people together, instead of individually, can create happiness between them that couldn't have been experienced by either person. Do you agree with that?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on the person, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Person in
okay.
question,
Generally
you know.
speaking, when
Yeah,
people,
yeah, sure.
yeah, most people don't
Okay,
want
yeah.
to be,
Generally speaking,
yeah, the
yeah, I'm happy to
Unabomber
concede that.
living out in the middle of the forest, okay?
No,
So,
I'm
yeah.
happy to.
So if we expand,
You were speaking as if it was an absolute, but I'm happy to
okay, I'm
concede
sorry.
that generally
So, yeah,
humans,
so
social creatures, prefer to be with
sure.
one another. Yeah.
So if we expand this outward and outward, we have different systems. We can use economics even to describe interactions between different groups of people where we can understand that value can be created. It's not a finite thing. There's not a finite amount of value in the world that multiple people coming together can create value for other people that they wouldn't have otherwise experienced themselves or the other people wouldn't have experienced, right? If you have people that
Sure.
sit and so I would say that because we all should want to experience the maximum amount of utility or value or happiness in our lives, right? We're all kind of invested in everybody else's happiness or utility or value. That if you start to have people that only serve as like a net drain on everybody else, that these people are undesirable and should be like, you should try to change these people. There should be like an active effort.
What should happen to the undesirables?
I don't know. So, I mean, we're talking social pressure at this point. I mean, there's like a ton of different avenues that this can happen in, right? Whether it's how we teach people or how we talk
Right.
to people or how we interact with our friends or how we talk to other people online or the terms of service we have and things like Twitter or Facebook. I mean, there's like a
But
million different.
what if the undesirables simply don't agree with an ideological precept? What if they don't believe that God is real?
Then it really depends on the topic that we're talking there, on what area you go to, right?
Well, historically, society ostracized and tried to kill these people.
Sure, and depending on what your position is on what topic, yeah, I think that's an okay measure, sure.
Okay. Well, I don't agree that society should just be free to tyrannize its minorities.
Okay, cool. So let's ask a question. Let's say that you are a black person in the United States, okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Let's say that somebody walks up to you and they put a gun to your head. Do you think you have the right to actively stop that person?
I know I do.
Okay, let's say that you know that a person is going to come up to you and put a gun to your head. Can you take preemptive action against that person, or do you have to wait for them to pull the trigger?
If you've got a good justification for belief of the intent, yeah, I think you can, can't you?
Okay, let's
I'm
say
not a
that.
legal expert.
Sure.
I would assume you can.
Let's say that there is one man, and let's say that he gives the orders to send people to kill you. One guy is going to send 5 people to try to kill you. Do you think you have the moral authority? Now, I'm assuming it perfect. You know for a fact this kind of. Do you think that you have the moral authority to act against this person if he's sending people to actively kill you?
If he's sending people to kill me, yes.
Okay. Now, one more step back. Let's say that you have people like Richard Spencer who are advocating for a system that would inevitably lead to state-sanctioned violence, forcing you from your home. Do you think you have the moral authority to act in violent means against these people?
Well, no, because I mean, the equivalent of what you're asking. If I thought that some crippled boy in a wheelchair was going to try and find a way to kill me, would I be justified in killing him even though he can't move? No, of course not. He can say
What?
everything that he wants, but he can't act on that.
Okay,
Richard Spencer
no,
would
wait,
never
hold on.
act on
So you
this.
said that if one man was giving orders to other people to go and kill me, that you could take action against that man. If there is a person that is advocating for a political system that would have you excised from your country by force, by state force, how is that different?
How is that not different?
Well, I don't think it's different because both people are advocating for an outcome that's going to result in violence being used against you.
Well, the question is who's the sovereign? And if you want to look at the outcome is not in your favor because Richard Spencer is never going to bring in society that will end up excising trans people or whatever it is, whatever.
Well, that would be the goal of Richard Spencer Society.
It doesn't matter what his goal is. He can't do it. His goal could be to fly to the moon. He still can't do it.
But hold on. So you don't. First of all, you don't necessarily know that, especially with the state of the world as it's in today, right? You don't necessarily know that, right?
I see no reason to think that will be the case.
Okay, how about the fact that so many governments in the world are starting to tilt a little bit more right, or the fact that we have somebody in the United States White House right now that is arguably like very fucking weird and pushes in those directions? Like, what do you mean?
I would say then that the most sensible thing to do is not to try and inflame those passions.
I'm not asking you what is sensible. I'm asking you for moral justification. That's what I'm asking
Of
you.
what?
Of whether or not you
Of
could
what?
enact violence against these types of people. I'll use another real example.
Only,
Let's
I
say,
think only if there's a real and present threat to your person that can be justified. And I think that
okay,
what you're suggesting
that's
doesn't create a
awesome.
real and present threat.
Okay, what? That's awesome. So you just agreed to getting rid of hate speech because people that argue about hate speech say that there are types of hate speech that create clear and present threats to the existence of some groups of people.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of people would say hate speech is, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, if that's how they define it.
Okay, so let's say, for instance, you are somebody who is living in the United States because your parents brought you over when you were really young, okay, and you filed under a program here called the delayed, fuck, I don't remember what it's called, but whatever DACA stands for, citizenship. You filed for that, and now you're under that. And let's say there are a bunch of people in the streets that are saying, "Fuck you, you need to get shipped out of the country and go home," using state force, right? Now, if I would have asked you 10 years ago, or no, 5, I don't remember when DACA went into place, but if I would have asked you, like, do you have a right? Do you have the moral justification to be violent against those people? And you'd say, well, no, because nothing's going to happen. And now Trump is in the White House, and we're looking at DACA possibly being destroyed. Do you think that those people have moral justification to act against those types of people?
No, because the people themselves are not, like, deporting an illegal alien is not the same as visiting violence upon the person unjustifiably.
Oh, no, yes, it is. It is absolutely.
I don't agree.
You do agree. You do agree. You're being a contrarian. So you're telling me that you don't think it is a violent...
I think we have the right, in fact, Murray, the obligation to deport illegal aliens because they're criminals.
What happened to free association, Sargon? Wait, what?
I agree with free association, but I also agree that we should be a nation of laws. You have to understand that principles all contradict each other at some point.
No, they don't. Wait, hold on.
They do.
Wait. Is that what you believe? Wait, if you would have said that at the beginning, it would have made this conversation so much more simple.
You're never going to find a philosopher who disagrees with that.
You think that all principle, absolutely. Of course. Why do you think people waste so much time on boring shit like epistemology? Fucking Christ. So you're telling me that all principles are contradictory at some point? Like,
probably. I think that you take anything to its zenith, you're going to contradict a bunch of them.
So what an actual philosopher would tell you is that any contradiction in a moral system will lead to something called the principle of explosion, where by contradiction, your entire system becomes pointless if you actually believe that you have conflicting and violating principles. So no, this idea that like everybody knows it...
No, hang on, right? Yeah, yes, that's exactly what happens. It's called a dilemma, and you end up having to change your worldview. Your moral framework changes. Lemon is the best example that I know of this to explain it.
Okay, let's back up. Okay, to DACA. So let's say right now you exist in a state and you have...
No, what you're saying is your moral framework doesn't change, and that's not true. It changes all the time.
No, I never said my moral framework didn't change. Changing your moral framework versus having it be contradictory are two totally different things. You can have one consistent moral framework and then change to another consistent moral framework. That doesn't mean either are contradictory.
I think all moral frameworks are eventually contradictory. I can't think of any that isn't contradictory in some way.
Okay.
But these contradictions normally manifest themselves in dilemmas, like specifically moral dilemmas, which as you accurately said, ought. And the resolution of a moral dilemma, like a moral dilemma doesn't go away just because you ignore it. It goes away once you resolve it, and you have to make a decision. And that decision itself is an alteration of your moral worldview. So.
Okay, so going back to the DACA people, let's say that somebody exists in the country, they file with the government, they seem to be doing okay, and now somebody removes the ability for them to do that, right? And now under threat of state-sanctioned force, right? So ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, whatever, or FBI, whatever, right, will come and actually enact violence against you. Maybe not like kill you, beat you up, but forcibly remove you from a country and kick you out. Why do these people not have moral justification for violence against groups of people that are advocating for this?
Because the group of people who are advocating for it aren't advocating for anything illegal or even immoral. The immoral thing that is done is being in someone else's country illegally.
Okay, so are you arguing, because I'm trying to get a moral answer from you and you keep appealing to the law, so are you saying that like whatever...
No, I'm saying like I think it's immoral to illegally enter someone's country and reside there.
What if you're 3?
Then the parent carries the burden of, don't they?
Okay, then if you try to get rid of DACA, you're kicking out the kid that grew up here. Do you think that's moral?
Sorry, say that again, sorry.
So DACA is children that were brought over illegally through no fault of their own, were brought over and then were raised in the United States, blah, blah, blah. These are the people that are going to be kicked out, right? So you think that it's justifiable to kick them out?
Well, I mean, it is justifiable, but I probably wouldn't myself.
Okay, do you think that those people have a right to feel like they have moral... Do those people have moral justification for enacting violence against people that are trying to kick them out of where they were born or where they were grew up at? You don't. Why not?
No, because I think we do have a moral obligation to follow rules.
Okay, so now you're going to say the argument is that the laws are what dictate the morality?
It's the source of morality.
Wait, but that's exactly what you just said.
No, it's not. I knew you were going to say that, and it's not.
Well, because that's what you're appealing to the law for your sense of moral justification.
No, I didn't say the law. I didn't say the laws are.
You said we have a moral obligation to follow the law, didn't you?
Yeah, but the laws themselves might not be moral.
So you're
saying
they're
not moral, then we have a moral obligation to change the laws.
Okay, so you're saying we have a moral obligation to follow laws, but laws themselves might not be moral.
Yes.
So what if somebody thinks that a law isn't moral, but somebody else is enforcing that immoral law upon them, like, say, during the civil rights era in the United States? Do you think that that person is acting immorally to try to, like, not have that law be enforced upon them?
No, not necessarily immorally in that regard, but that doesn't change that there is an obligation to follow the laws. But like I said, I'm not saying that the laws are the source of morality.
Okay, so let's say that you have a slave.
Hang on. Right, we can't just rush on from this, because the thing is, you've really got to put it in sort of Kantian sort of conception. Like, what we do have to agree that it is morally correct to follow the laws.
I don't agree. I don't necessarily agree with that. No, not at all.
Well then. What kind of world do you end up in if you don't agree to that?
Well, I have a moral system where I determine what I think is good or bad based on what aligns with my morals, not based on what the law says. What kind of world do you live in? But
if my moral system says I should kill you, you're an infidel, and the law says I shouldn't, do I have a moral obligation to follow the law?
No, I don't think anyone has a moral obligation to follow the law.
Then you think it's moral for me to kill you because you're an infidel?
Under your system, it might be, sure.
Okay.
I mean, what, do you disagree that people think that way? I'm sure you know what ISIS is. I'm sure you shit on fucking Muslims like for half your fucking career, so you should know that people think that this shit is moral. Yeah, I mean, you should know that people think...
I agree that there are people who think that this shit is moral.
Okay.
But I also think that they're not moral people.
Okay, so if all of us can probably agree, I think, could be wrong, but all of us can probably agree that if somebody is 3 years old and they're brought to another country and raised there, it's probably not their fault that it happened. I think most of us can agree with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if most of us can agree with that, if we're not assigning blame to the person, usually, philosophically, we require agency in order to punish somebody. If they can't make the choice, we're not going to punish them for it. This is why things like entrapment are real, right? So if somebody's trying to punish a child who's now grown up under DACA and kick them out of the country as a result of that, why doesn't that person have a moral justification to enact violence against those types of people?
Because I don't think that gives you license to be able to hurt someone.
But they're trying to hurt you.
Just because, they're not trying to hurt you.
They're trying to get you kicked out of your country.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean hurting you.
I can't. We have to go. I can't take that statement seriously. Really?
What are you talking about?
Removing somebody from the country they've lived their whole lives and kicking them out into a foreign country, you don't think that's a type of harm?
It depends how we're defining harm, doesn't it? Right? But I don't
by
agree it's a
any reasonable definition. Okay, so let's say right now, let's say I would have flied here. Let's say right.
Look, I'm not saying.
No. We have to agree on this statement.
It's not authoritarian.
No. It's not authoritarian. None of this has anything to do with authoritarianism. Okay, let's say that I go to your house and I take you out of the house using the UK, whatever the Britbonger police are. Okay, take you out of your house and I fly you to America and I say, hey, by the way, you're living here for the rest of your fucking life. I haven't caused a measurable harm to you.
But if I had no right to live in the United Kingdom, right, and I was a US citizen, and I was living in the UK illegally, then the state has the right, and in fact, you could argue the duty to do that.
Okay,
right?
so if you're
the harm done to me, the harm done to me is I mean, you could say social harm, maybe, but there's no way we can start having the state police that. You could say there was maybe emotional harm, but again, I don't see what the state can really do. I mean, that you start creating license for massive extensions of state overreach, which is why we usually relegate it to physical harm, as in violence done to you. That's not violence. It might suck for you, yeah, but sometimes things happen that suck, man.
I don't know what the whole point. So obviously, sometimes things happen that suck.
I don't necessarily think the avoidance of harm is the greatest moral good anyway.
Wait, hold on. Oh my god, hold on, because we just said like a million things. Okay, so firstly, originally, we agreed that a 2-year-old person probably shouldn't be punished later in life for a decision they didn't make. But now you've walked back on that and you've said, well, hold on, if the law says it, fuck that person, they should be punished.
No,
So
I
which
didn't
one
say
is it?
that.
Okay, wait. So can you clarify there?
Nick, okay, if you shut up, I would. I personally, in my judgment, think it would be unfair to that person, right? But the question is, what does the person, the bureaucrat or the civil servant in charge think, and what does the law allow?
Wait,
and the
but
law
that's
does
not. We're
allow
not
that.
having a question of what is the law. We both know
Okay,
what the
well,
law allows.
on my personal feeling about it, yeah, I wouldn't send them back. I think it'd be mean.
Okay, I'm not asking you what's mean.
I'd give them citizenship.
We're having a moral discussion right now. I'm not asking what would be mean or good or no. I'm sorry.
Well, that's me saying I think it would be immoral to do that.
Okay, so then so you think that the state forcing somebody to leave their country, if that person was there through no fault of their own and had lived their whole life there, that would be an immoral act, correct or no?
It certainly could be.
Okay.
I mean, it depends. It depends on the
so,
who the person is, what they're doing, stuff like this.
So
blah blah blah.
If the state
is, but in basic, sure, I could have.
So if the state is positioning itself to enact an immoral form of violence against you, okay, by deporting you forcibly from your country.
I don't agree that's well, I mean, you could, I guess you could call it a form of violence if you want to be extreme about it.
I think that most reasonable people would agree that it would be a form of state-sanctioned violence to show up at your house with a gun and say, hey, you're leaving this fucking country forever. Most people would agree that is a form of state-sanctioned violence.
Again, that's the same as saying it's a form of state-sanctioned violence for the police to turn up at a murderer's house and do the same. Yes, it is a form of state-sanctioned violence. Yeah, it is. But sometimes state-sanctioned violence is justified.
I agree.
And you could justify deporting an illegal immigrant.
I disagree. But I'm glad because we got
How
there.
How can you not justify deporting an illegal immigrant?
Because we just let's walk again through the same garden, okay? We just said
I know what you're going to say, but you're ignoring the fact that it is also an immoral thing to be in another country illegally.
But we both agreed that we weren't going to charge somebody with an immoral action that they didn't commit.
Yeah, but that's my personal choice.
That's what we're talking about, is our personal moral choices here. We're not talking about the law right now. What do you mean?
Well, you seem to be setting objective standards.
No, I'm having a discussion of morality with you. That's all I'm having.
Yeah, I know, but you seem to be trying to set objective moral standards. No. Like, if X, then Y, always.
Yeah, that's how conversations work. Yeah, of course. We're moving from one point to the next.
I think you've missed my point. But look, it's nearly 2 a.m. here, so
I guess
do you feel that we're okay to wrap up, or is there anything you want to say at the end? Or?
Yeah, sure. What are your final closing thoughts?
Well, I thought it was a really interesting conversation. I don't see how we can separate gender from the biological reality it's supposed to describe, and I don't think we should expand the definition of a gender role to include its antonym, but that's just me. I guess you feel that we can?
My only wish was for this conversation, I wish you would have told me why the biological term male is supposed to describe anything. I wish we could have figured that out, but maybe for our next conversation.
Well, for our ability to operate as human social animals, that's why.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, buddy, it was a fun conversation. Have fun.
Yeah, I had a good time, man.
Yep. Bye.
All right. Take it easy.